the point of life is to grow and evolve. And sometimes that aligns, and sometimes it aligns for a time and then doesn't anymore. And none of it has to be like a failure.
Welcome to the Aligned and Magnetic Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Ashley, intuitive business coach certified by the International Coaching Federation, and they call me the money mindset and manifestation queen. I take a spiritual and practical approach that's backed by neuroscience to help you make your vision a reality, but more importantly, doing it in a way that lights you the fuck up. If you're ready to create an aligned, magnetic, and profitable business so you can live a life and do the work you are absolutely in love with, you're in the right place. Get ready to hear the powerful questions and raw lessons that you need to create success your way. Thank you so much for being here. Let's dive in. Hi, loves. Welcome back to another episode of the Aligned and Magnetic Podcast. Today we have a guest, Candice, who is a former marriage and family therapist turned master certified life coach and the founder of the Defying Gravity Revolution. Her mission is to help women stop wondering if they married the wrong guy and start enjoying the marriage they imagined when they said, "I do." She's a podcaster, author, connoisseur of grapefruit juice. Oh my God, I love grapefruit juice. And a jazzercise enthusiast. I took jazz a large majority of my childhood upbringing. I don't think I was very good
Love
at
it.
it.
Doesn't matter. It's just for fun.
Exactly. So she lives in Utah with her husband, 3 children, and their dog. Thank you for being here, Candice.
Thanks for having me.
How do you say your last name, by the way? Is it Tone or Toone?
It's Toone.
Toone. Okay, that makes sense given the O, but you never know these days.
You never know.
So we connected in Tavana's network, the Coaches Collective, and I just really loved your energy. And once we actually got onto a connection call and started chatting, I was like, oh my God, I feel like my listeners could totally benefit from what you talk about and your experience and all of that stuff, because how many entrepreneurs or just humans in general are in a relationship and struggling?
I'm wondering, what am I doing here?
And it's so fascinating because at the time we connected, I told you a little bit about my marriage and how I left and all of that stuff. And so I don't know, maybe this episode will give people an opportunity to shift their relationship if that's what they want, or the courage to leave if that's what they want as well.
Yeah. I always like to talk about it's shifting your relationship either way. So we shift either with the person we're with right now, or we shift to a person that fits better, which likely means our ex-partner also shifts to someone that fits better.
100%.
I like to frame it as a win for everyone.
Yeah, because there's no use in staying and forcing something to work. Sometimes we outgrow the partnerships that we're in. What do you think about that? What's something that you help your clients with when it comes to growth?
I think everybody has the option, and two people have unique autonomy in relationships. And it's not that we always leave someone behind. It's they didn't want to go that way, but I did. And so it's just we have freedom to choose always. And if the person we chose 10 years ago wants to still keep choosing similar paths, amazing. And if not, still could be amazing for us to choose whatever serves us well. And so I don't like when people come to me and say, oh, I just feel so guilty. I should have to stay. Or we don't have to do any of that because the point of life is to grow and evolve. And sometimes that aligns, and sometimes it aligns for a time and then doesn't anymore. And none of it has to be like a failure.
I love that because actually I think that one of the biggest reasons I didn't end my relationship sooner is because I felt this need to prove that I could make
Yes.
it work.
Hmm.
And in retrospect, I don't want to say like I wish because I don't really regret it because it all unfolded the way that it needed to and I
Sure.
had lessons to learn. Um,
Hmm.
but I think that definitely taking the shame out of whatever you decide to do is a really big, helpful tool.
Yes. We are all passed down or across rules from like our grandma or like our neighbor or someone
Mm-hmm.
that that were like, oh, the measure of success was extended to me by these cultural norms or by these societal rules or by my own family's opinions.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're going to adopt them, which a lot of times we do adopt them and like them and they work well for us, but if we adopt one that doesn't work well for us, that's just good for us to be aware of. And it may serve me and our kids if we have them and our partner if we just let ourselves blossom in the way that feels most aligned to us.
And the other thing too, just to add on to that is in my circumstance, I came from divorced parents and family members, like divorced parents, divorced grandparents, pretty much everyone except for my dad's parents were divorced. But I always heard the judgment,
Yeah, for
right,
sure.
from my family members. I'd be like, oh, he's divorced again.
Yeah.
So it is interesting when you do look at where those beliefs come from, and it's just helpful to be aware of our thinking patterns.
And aware of what we're trying to prove, right? Like, what
Yes,
exactly do we prove by staying longer? Like, is
absolutely.
it pain tolerance that we're trying to prove? What exactly are we proving here? Just to make sure it's an award that we want to win, which
Mhm.
I don't know if we always are, if we just stay for reasons outside of us.
Absolutely. So I'm really curious before diving in, if you don't mind me asking, what made you go from marriage and family therapist to life coaching?
Yeah, totally. I don't mind you asking at all. There's a couple of reasons. One, therapy tends to be, and everyone listening, hear me say it's a sweeping generalization, so it's not always the case, but tends to be a disease model, meaning we have to find a diagnosis and treat it like an illness, which I think, especially in relationships, that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just we're having trouble, but both of us are healthy. I didn't like myself being viewed as a patient with a problem. It's just like, no, this is just a skill I haven't developed yet. I liked that vibe a little bit better. Although I do 100% believe that there's a place for therapy. My personal thing was I didn't want the client to be like something's wrong with them. I wanted it to be like we're just figuring it out together. So that was one reason. And then secondly, there's just so much more freedom in coaching than there is in therapy. Therapy is often held down by insurance policies or state guidelines, and those things are in place for a reason to provide safety, of course. And as they provide safety, they also provide limits. And I just didn't want to have any.
I love that. That's a really great excuse. I find, even though I'm certified with the International Coaching Federation, there is still opportunity to just use different tools and techniques to help support our clients in the best way possible, because it's not always one tool that's going to get them where they need to be.
And I think coaching also allows, and therapy does, again, there's lots of blurred lines and movement, but coaching allows for internal governance by your own ethics, which I think is such a useful muscle to develop for everyone. What do I genuinely feel good about offering as a service? And when can I ethically refer? It's just really good questions for everyone to answer for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So many things that we could go into around that too. But something that really stands out for me in your bio description is that you help women stop wondering if they married the wrong guy and start enjoying the marriage they imagined when they said, I do. Can you tell us more about this?
Yes, because the wondering is such a waste of energy and such a pain point. And a lot of times, wondering comes because we're afraid of making a decision. We're afraid of making the decision to forgive and stay. We're afraid of making the decision to accept that he always leaves his socks on the floor or some version of that. We're just afraid to be like, yes, I choose this. And we're also afraid to be like, I don't choose this. And so we stay in wondering land, which just stagnates. I don't care if women choose to stay or go. I think that they are the best person to know that. But what I do want is for them to connect with their own power to make decisions. So that's why the wondering is something that we want to be like, oh, notice I'm choosing to wonder instead of choosing to honor the life that I really want and discover what that is. Because I
Mhm.
think every woman deserves, every person deserves to find out what that is and go for it if they want to.
I love that. What comes up for me is really being confident in your decision instead of waffling. I've observed that a lot of people will spend a lot of time wasting energy wondering, should I make this decision?
And it doesn't get you anywhere. The only place it does get you is a disconnection with yourself, which doesn't serve you in any capacity of your life.
Because then you end up questioning your decisions, and questioning your decisions just leads to downward spiral.
Yeah. And then it leads you to defer to other people, which is such a problem because then you end up being in relationships that you may or may not like because you're like, I guess that person's in charge of what I want. And I just think that the more we strengthen our connection to, I'm allowed to want what I want. I don't necessarily have to take action on it, but I at least want to know what I want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. What would you say is like the biggest thing that you maybe spend time on your clients with when it comes to turning off the wondering and stepping into their power?
Yeah. So I like to teach all my clients that they can create safety regardless of what he's doing. And of course, with the caveat, like if he's being abusive, that's a separate conversation. But like in general, like he's annoying, sort of things. Like you can create your own experience regardless of what he's doing. And your experience might be, I'm just going to turn off and give him that back. Your experience might be, I'm going to advocate for that to be different. I'm going to make it funny. There's so many choices you have. And so what I always love to spend time on is looking for the place where she believes she doesn't have any options and finding them because they are always there.
I love that. And how do you like start looking for those options?
Yeah. So we take whatever he's done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, something he did that was annoying. And we're always like, let's zoom in on this last time that he specifically did that because then the brain is like zoomed in like a stage scene and it's easier to see, oh, I could have this. I didn't do that because it's easier to see that when we zoom way in because a lot of times people come in the wondering phase and say, I can't talk to him or he never listens or we don't have fun anymore. And those generalities are really hard to solve because when you try to like open them up, they're like, but there's also this and there's also this. And so we really constrain into in that one moment,
Mm.
let's show you how you did have options in that one moment. And then also in the next moment, you had options and also in the next moment. And when we really zoom in on our experience, that's when the options and possibilities reveal themselves.
Yeah, so helpful instead of trying to tackle the big picture all at once, right?
Yes, because the big picture is almost never true, too. I can never talk to him. I'm like, I bet you have spoken to him this week.
Right.
Probably. Or I bet there was one time where this happened. And so we like to not prove, but offer them an option to be like, it's not true. And it doesn't serve you to think there's brick walls in my life where I can't do anything. That doesn't serve you. I love
Changing.
using the phrase, it's a favor to you to do this.
It's like changing the narrative, right? From
Yeah.
I don't have any options, I'm stuck with this, to wait a second, I do have power, and I can do
Mhm.
all of these other things instead.
And sometimes just changing the narrative to, I have options I don't want to take is even a bit of a movement.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I see those options. I don't want to take them right now. I actually do pick the option I'm doing because I like it from, and we explore what their values are. And then decision making gets easier as you really refine your own sense of values and what's important to you.
I love that. Something that you touched on really briefly in there is communication. And I'm curious, what communication challenges do women present in their relationships? I know a lot of my clients struggle sometimes to communicate with their partners.
For sure. I think a lot of times, and again, we're talking in a sweeping generalization here, but a lot of times we're not as direct as we need to be.
Yeah.
And so we're like, I'm just going to hint at this, or I'm going to come around at the back door of it, or I'm going to say part of what I want, but not all of it. And sometimes that's because we don't know. We haven't talked to ourselves enough to really figure out what we want. But we wanted to talk to ourselves first, figure that out, and then present it to him as directly as possible.
Mm.
Because it's just easier when the whole truth is out on the table.
What's the benefit of that? Why would it be helpful for someone to take the time? And because that's a lot of work, right? To think about, okay, what do I actually want? A lot of people, at least my observation is that a lot of women, particularly even moms, I would say, they're just like running around doing all of the things and they don't have the time.
They don't make the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't have to sit down with a journal with like absolute quiet. Like you can do this while you're driving carpool or whatever. But the reason it's important is because it's very hard to get something that you haven't identified. And also, if you don't identify what you want, a lot of times the way women talk is just, I'm waiting to see what he said. We're used to reacting to somebody else instead of being proactive. And I'm not saying there's never a time to be reactive because, yes, sometimes he's in charge of making the decisions and sometimes you will be, but we want to have that movement where if it's something that's really important to you, you want to be very clear about it from the get-go. And if it's something that's less important to you, then sure, go ahead and react to whatever he says. But the reason it's important to sit down and take that time, sit down in the carpool chair, sit down in the kitchen table, wherever it is because it's just so much harder to get it and to also know that you got it and then celebrate it if you don't know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. In coaching, we always talk about celebrating and recognizing our accomplishments, right? So if you don't know when to celebrate that you've gotten it, then you just continue to think that everything's a failure, your relationship, you, maybe all of these other things.
Especially when we're used to the story, like, I can't ever talk to him.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't identify what I wanted was a clear answer, yes or no, are we taking that trip?
Mm-hmm.
If you're like, that was success, then unless you identify that, then you're just gonna be like, we talked about it, but it didn't really land, and here's why I don't like, and it's just gonna cycle back into that general thing, which is gonna feel frustrating to you and him.
Yeah. So taking the time to get clear and then to take the direct action, it sounds like it's a really big game changer.
And to call attention to that worked out actually. And it's also just safer for everyone when we have all of it out on the table because you've probably talked to someone before and you're like, I can tell there's more to this story. I don't really know what else is there, but I feel like a little bit wary. Nobody likes to feel that way in conversations.
Communication is such a huge thing that I've had to work on in my own relationships. I feel like we make a lot of assumptions
Yes.
about like how other people are like feeling or viewing the situation. What tips do you have for women when they are spiraling or making a ton of assumptions?
I always want them to answer the question, how do we know?
Mm,
And sometimes they'll be like, well, he's done it a billion times before. And I'm like, okay. And it's useful to you. Again, it's a favor to you to consider it may be possible that he doesn't do it this time. Because when we go into the conversation expecting a certain outcome, we're going to unconsciously influence it to go that way.
hmm.
Like they'll say things like, I know this is pretty expensive and you probably don't want to spend money on it, but can I? And then I heard pretty expensive, I don't want to. So it's just easy for me to say no. Whereas if we're like, listen, here's the thing that I want to invest in. Here's why it's important to me. Here's how it would benefit our family. Here's how I would get the money for it. It's just easier for him to say yes. Not that he's in charge of the finances. That's not what I'm trying to say. But when you have finances that are combined, we want to come at it with a belief that it's possible we can get what we want instead of assuming he's probably going to say no. So I'm just going to have a wimpier ask.
It totally changes the way that we frame something, right? Like the way that we present it. And I think, too, what I'm picking up on, and just a trend that I've seen with women and my clients, is confidence in the self. So, not just like thinking that he's going to say no, but also, are you confident in yourself that this is
Hmm.
the right decision? And sometimes I think we look for reasons not to, and then we set it up in a discussion with our partner. Oh, they said no, so like I can't
Yeah.
do it, even though I really want to do it.
Especially if our setup is this seems uncertain and dangerous. There's something about people who love us that they're going to pick up on that and be like, she's scared, so I'm going to tell her she doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Which then reads as he wouldn't let me, which is maybe not the same.
I'm super curious. Do you touch on, I guess it is that whole empowerment piece and stepping into your power? Because I feel like sometimes we can slip into allowing our partners to be a crutch. What, if anything, do you have to say on that topic?
I would just say that it's not always a bad thing if we do that because we're in partnership for a reason that sometimes he'll take the lead and sometimes we will. And so if you're going to use your partner as like I'm going to defer to him or whoever it is, if I'm going to defer to them, we just want to know that we're doing that on purpose
Totally.
because it can be just as dangerous to have the binary of I rely on them, I don't rely on them. I'm empowered, I'm not empowered. And what's more true is really, I don't want to take the lead on this one, and I'm empowering myself to not take the lead. Or I'm empowering myself to take the lead, but I know that I could pick either one. That's true empowerment to me. And allowing yourself to fluidly move between, because otherwise, why are we even in relationship if we never let them go first or do the bulk of the work?
It's interesting because in our connection call, we actually talked about control
Mm-hmm.
and how sometimes we can see these controlling, or I would say like unconscious, subconscious manipulation tactics to get people to do what they want to do. What themes do you talk about with your clients around that?
I think it's so important for each person to be able to tune into their own sense, like in their felt sense, not their verbal thought discussions, but do I like this? Do I not like this? Because we're wired that way to be able to know if something feels good to us or not. And so each person on an individual basis, I would invite her or him, if I don't usually coach men, but I would invite whoever it was to be like, when you really sit and think about it, do you want to do the thing or do you not? And if they want to do it, then it's not controlling. So we just identify what are your cues for yes or no? And do you wait to follow his cues or can you decide on your own? And just really connecting themselves to their own values, their own intuition is the basis for everything. And then unlearning beliefs like, my job is to make him happy. My job is to keep him satisfied. My job is whatever. And anytime the motivation is some version of I have to manage his feelings, we always take some steps back from that. And again, it's not that we never want to manage his feelings, because sometimes, like, if his grandma died or something, of course you want to like try and go make him feel better. But if it's not always our job, and being able to find the choice in every moment is the way that you won't be controlled.
And just like taking ownership of your experience, because I think sometimes the lines can get really blurry in partnerships of, oh, like I'm expected or I need to console or make sure that they don't feel a certain way about something that I have to say. Um, but really, what it sounds like you're saying is that actually we're just two individual people in a partnership, and there's space for both people to feel their things
Yes.
and to be like held in a space.
And that sometimes means that you're going to say no and he's not going to understand that.
Hmm.
And we get to be like, I know that he wants me to do whatever it is. It's a no for me, but I understand why he's sad. And I don't have to make that mean that I was a jerk or that he's controlling. It's just like he's allowed to be disappointed if I don't want to go to that event with him. Of course, he wants me there. I'm very awesome, but I don't want to go. So we can make room for one partner saying no and the other partner not liking that. I'm not going to be mean to each other about it, but we're like, yeah, I get it. You want me to be there and I'm not going to go. And I love you.
But not
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah. It's just, I'm never going to do that, but I love you. And please take a friend and have the best time.
Totally.
And then that we can just trust that our partner is a resourceful enough human. It's okay if they're disappointed sometimes.
Yeah, totally. They'll figure it out.
Yeah. And we
Um,
love them through their disappointment, but it's just not our job to fix it.
totally. Yeah, I love that. Frees up so much time and space to be able to focus on like you as an individual versus always tiptoeing around your partner, like trying to figure out how to make them happy 100% of the time. Yeah.
Definitely.
When it comes to finances and managing finances as a couple,
Hmm.
I know my clients and my audience, this is like a topic that has come up before.
Sure.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you see couples have when it comes to combining or just managing money in their relationship?
Yeah. I think managing money for sure, and really in all scenarios, but with money specifically, we make it mean something it doesn't mean when somebody makes a financial decision that's different than what we would make, right? There's always the age-old concern of am I a spender, am I a saver, all of that. And we want to just really get curious about why are they doing that? The truth is, most likely they would do that regardless of which partner they were with. If they were with you, if they were with me, if they were with some random listener, they would probably behave the same way about money. which is just really useful for us to know because their decisions about money are all about them. And the more that we can just be like, oh, there's no if he loved me, he would, blah. There's none of that. That's not a thing. The only reason he's spending or saving or whatever he's doing with money is because he's trying to find security.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can ask ourselves, oh, okay, what is the security about here? And if both of us come to the table believing that the other person deserves to feel secure and they might find it in a different way, the conversation is going to be a lot less volatile because there's no worry about like, if he loved me then.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, oh, we want to find safety. He feels safer with thousands of dollars in the bank account. I feel safer with zero balance credit cards. So we're going to have some discussion then about do we pay down our debts or do we build up our savings? And it means nothing about either one of us because both of us want the same thing, which is security. So how can we define security for ourselves together?
I love that. And I'm wondering, because I know that the topic of money can come with a lot of feelings and a lot of trauma and a lot of beliefs and emotions and all of that. So, how would a couple even come together and have like a neutral conversation? How would a couple who is not aligning on finances come together and make like those decisions that honor both people in the partnership?
Yeah, to what you said, it probably will come after some fights, to be totally honest. And then each partner will have the opportunity to step back and be like, why was that so important to me? Where was I feeling threatened? And if I was coaching them, I would be like, separately, please go answer that question, knowing that your answer is valid. You came from your own experiences. So after we had this fight, let's break it down. If it was a fight, let's say about saving or not, why did you want to do that? What happens if you don't do that? And then let's bring that back together. One thing that when I was very first married, I didn't agree with, but now I might, is like, it might be okay if you don't share finances. Let's even put that on the table because do we want this to be a thing that keeps coming between us if it's hard to find a resolution? Maybe there's lots of different ways that this could look. Maybe you have a joint account and your own separate accounts. Maybe you're totally separate and one of you writes a check for the utilities to the other one for the month. There's so many choices, and the more choices we have, the safer it's going to be.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really just about finding the option that's going to work for the relationship.
And it doesn't matter what your mom or your grandma or your neighbor or your sister or Dave Ramsey says or whoever else is in the financial space. Like that worked for them, and you two get to decide what's most important to you, knowing that like your connection is intact regardless of the way the money looks.
What would you recommend as a first step for a couple who is not agreeing on finances?
Oh, as a first step, I would just say, we don't agree, and it's okay that we don't. Like maybe it could be okay. I would try to help them introduce some safety cues into the conversation. Let's make this a little bit lighter than it has been before. Because when the stakes are high and the options are low, like we don't have any options and we're probably going to die, like that conversation is never going to go well. It's if you think you're trapped in a scenario where there's no choices, it's never going to go well. So the very first step is to be like, we have some options here. This doesn't have to be a marriage ender or a relationship ender. We have some options of how this could go. And I'm still here with you.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can't get to that place, let's put some options on the table and we still like this person, regardless of which option we end up choosing. We'd spend time there until we found that.
I love that. It's reminding me of conversations I have with my clients when they're trying to make more money in their business, ironically, that it's hard to get into a more energized and empowering and open place when your brain is freaking out about bills to pay and like
Hmm.
all of the things that you have to do. So it sounds like really neutralizing and just coming down to reality and not being so high in your emotions and taking things so personally. That's where you can create more options and then actually look at what option's best going to serve us from here.
Yeah. And it's helpful if you can really identify what is at stake here, sweetheart. You do seem very afraid.
Yeah.
So what's going on for you? And not like, what's going on for you? Why are you so stupid? But maybe, what's happening? I love you and I want us to feel safe. What's at stake here? And he might tell you a story of like, how his house burned down and all the family savings was stored under the mattress and like it was so traumatic and everyone was like stressed. And you can be like, oh, that makes sense. We're not going to have mattress savings. We're going to do this instead. But when we know the story behind the stakes, it's so much easier to problem solve.
Absolutely. And I imagine that goes like beyond even discussing finances, right?
All conversations. If we know what's at stake here, where do you feel like you're being threatened or tied down? And when we ask that from a genuinely curious place, like you might ask a stranger in an interview, I don't have any emotional ties to this. I really just want to know. We're not going to make any decisions off of it. We're just putting all the puzzle pieces out on the table.
100%. And I know it's hard to do that when you're so emotionally connected to someone and fear
Mhm.
of losing them. What, if anything, do you have to say to someone who's in that place?
Yeah, there's the stakes really high up there. I don't have any choices because if I tell the truth, I'm going to lose this person. Of course, it's hard to communicate because look how high the stakes are and look how low the choices are. So in that scenario, I would be like, what if we just tell you in your own journal what's going on so that you can just get to know yourself a little bit better? And once we reveal that, then we can decide, do we want to bring any of that to the conversation between the two of you? Or do you just want to know that this is the kind of, for lack of a better word, baggage you're bringing into the marriage conversation? And it's okay that you're going to bring baggage. Everyone does. But we want to know what's in your suitcase if we can.
The more that we get to know ourselves, I think the easier it is to communicate and to work through and have a successful relationship.
Yeah, know and accept ourselves. And I always say accept yourself for now because like you can accept, oh, this is where I'm starting and I may change it. It's not like acceptance forever. I'm going to be like this, but it's like right now, this is where I am.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we have that safety within ourselves, it's easier to do anything really.
Yeah, 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 absolutely. And helps totally with like confidence as well and showing up for what you need and asking for what you need and all of that. I'm really curious if somebody finds themselves in a relationship having the same conversation over and over again with their partner, what advice would you have to give them?
Yeah, I think it would really depend. Like if it's just like a behavior that's annoying that they want it to change, I might actually just figure out a way to be like, I love this person enough to put up with this and I'm going to make it. But if it's something that's like dangerous or threatening, I would have to know what it was. But then I would work with them to be like, what is going on in your brain that you're willing to put up with this thing that's really threatening to you? And so the more we can make it like, and again, let's take the threatening one off the table. But if it's just something that's annoying, you're like, can you please load the dishwasher differently? Can you please come home? I don't know. What something that's not life threatening, really, is just bothersome. I would just consider how could we make this lighthearted? How could we introduce some humor here? And if they're going to keep doing that thing, how can you resource yourself around doing something else? For example, like my husband always likes to check his email right when everyone gets in the car. And I'm like, dude, we just got in the car. We're all seat belted in. Why are you checking your email right now? Drive the damn car is how it feels to me.
Oh my God, I was picturing him in the passenger seat. That would drive me
No,
nuts.
he sits in the park in driver's seat and waits to drive. And I'm like, why are you doing that? But now I know, oh, he's probably going to do that because I think in his mind, he's, I'm leaving work, I'm shutting down person and turning on dad person, and I'm in the car now. So this is like my conditioned cue to do it. And so for that, I'm like, okay, he's probably not going to ever stop doing that. So I'm going to be like, hey, kids, dad's going to check his email. So make sure you brought your book or a coloring or something. Like, let's let dad get in the car first and then we'll go join him later. Like, I can resource myself differently around something that he's not doing to like piss me off. He's not really even aware what's happening. And it's just a conditioned response in him that I'm willing to put up with.
I feel like there's so many things that we can do as individuals and in partnerships that really irritate the other person. But once you realize that they're doing this for a reason and don't take it so personal that, like, oh, he's doing this just to piss me off or whatever, can help with those options that you're talking about, right?
Yes. And we're like, he's going to do this. So now what do I want to do? Because sometimes people come to me and they're like, I've been told by coaches that my husband can just do whatever he wants. And I'm like, yep. And so can you. If he's doing something that you don't want to be a part of, then you can not get in the car yet, or you can so many things, right? Because they usually say to me, I guess I'm just supposed to put up with whatever he wants to do. And I'm like, that's one choice. You also have lots of other ones, and that's where we get the most leverage.
I love that. This is bringing up for me. So, in our connection call, you talked about confident companionship.
Mhm.
Do you want to talk more about that?
Yeah. So confident companionship means I've known myself really well. Like I've done the work to figure out what my values are, what's important to me, what's not important to me, where I want to take the lead, where I want him to take the lead. I'm knowing myself on an ongoing basis enough to know that. And then companionship means like I trust I can lean into this and relax into it sometimes, like we were talking about before, where it's not, I'm just taking care of myself over here and he's just taking care of himself over there. We've figured out how to intertwine in a way that feels vulnerable, but also anytime we need to pull back out, we can. And it's not, there's lots of gradations of pulling out, right? This is not a very safe place to be. If you can't see me, I have my hands like intertwined and clasped because then that means we lost a lot of our choices. This is not really safe either because then we've lost a lot of our connection. But if we're just like right here and we're moving like that's what confident companionship is. He has his side, I have his side, but there's definitely like this energy flowing between us in a way that we manage on purpose.
Mm. I love that so much. I feel like, so in my last relationship, I feel like my ex-husband and I were totally like this. Like I was off doing my own thing and he was just whatever doing his own thing. And yeah, in this relationship, so many people have made comments on the flow of energy and I can feel it, but it's not something that I knew other people could see. So it's just really fascinating to be in a new relationship where there is that flow and to experience it because it's so powerful
Yeah.
to find that healthy balance or like the way of being together and coexisting together that supports each individual and isn't just completely separate.
Yes. I like to give the visual of if you were going to hang up a hammock, let's say, and you had an oak tree on one side and like an aspen or like a weeping willow or something, but essentially like a wimpier tree over here. Got the strong one and the wimpier one, the hammock's always going to fall to the side of the stronger tree. So the goal is to have both of us be stronger trees so the hammock can swing between us and not end up on the ground closer to the strong one, which many people socialize as women and they are used to being the wimpier tree because they're like, we're supposed to just be nice and pleasant and make sure everyone around us is taken care of. But what happens when we do that to an overuse of that strategy is that the hammock just lays on the ground and doesn't and it dies essentially. And so what we want to do instead is I'm going to make sure that I'm happy first, that I'm cared for first, so that way we can have that flow like you're talking about. And it's so flattering and awesome that people are noticing that because it is an attractive quality when we see it in couples.
Yeah, and it's really amazing how other people can really detect that in not just in people, but in relationships, right?
Yeah.
So something that I've noticed is that, and I just want to hear what you think about this. So with the feminist movement, I feel like as women, we know we're not here just to please, we know we're not here just to this, and we have all this knowledge of behaviors and tendencies we don't have to do anymore. But I still find that a lot of women repeat the same patterns of their ancestors, of like generations before them, and they might not even be aware that they're doing it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think very first, just because we don't have to do something doesn't mean we would never choose to. So I think, and I mean, there's all gradations of the feminist movement, but I think the most useful interpretation of feminism is everyone chooses. All the disenfranchised groups, women, BIPOC, what all of them get to choose just as much as like the in power groups. And so that might mean that we choose to do similar things to what our grandparents did, but with a different flavor, with the I can choose flavor. So I think that's part of the thing is we don't want to go so far to I don't have to that I never should. And if I do, then I failed. That's not it. Also, like when we're threatened or when we're tired, you go back to your own habits. And so we must think something is at stake or we might be too tired. And so we're just like, I'm just going to do what I've seen. And I think you're right. Like it is an unconscious process sometimes. And so the goal is really to bring it to consciousness. Yeah, I could make my husband help me do the dishes right now, but I'm like tired. So I'd rather just get it done or I'd rather leave him. Right. But the point is that we're choosing. And as long as the invisible, intangible choice is in place, I think feminism is alive and well.
If there's anything that I keep hearing in this interview is like it's choice, it's options, it's choosing and getting behind the choice that you have instead of wallowing in it or like wondering about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And just really supporting yourself in what I think and feel and value really matters. And I'm going to go first to assert that declaration that what I think and feel matters. And I don't have to do it at my husband or at men in general, but I'm just like, mine matters and so does yours. So now how are we going to play that game?
Find a new way forward. I'm curious for all of our, I wanted to say entrepreneurs, but like my listeners tend to be high achievers, people who take on a lot. Some of them have kids, some of them don't. But I'm curious what's one piece of advice for someone who is looking to enjoy their marriage or their relationship, but they have so much on their plate. What is like one step or one piece of advice that you have for them?
Yeah, I think the one step or advice that you could add to your plate being full already is just be like, whatever interval of time you want, like every day, once a month, once a quarter, once an hour, whatever it is let me just make sure I know what I want. I always invite my people to say, let's make a list of 25 things that we really want and post it somewhere. And then just make sure that the decisions you're making day to day are at least leading you closer to the things on your list. So just having that guiding document
Yeah.
is going to help you make decisions more purposefully.
Yeah, it's so common to just get swept away by the busyness of life. I think that's probably where you see people like 30 years into their
We're
marriage.
like, wait, where did that even go?
Yeah. Where are we now? We're so far from what we originally signed up for, what we dreamed of once upon a time.
I haven't even thought about what I wanted because I have these kids and they needed to go to baseball or get their book report done or whatever. And
Yeah.
so, of course, those things are important. And we want you to have a turn in
Mhm.
whatever's going on in your family. And I think it's so useful if you do have kids is to show not just your daughters, of course, your daughters, but also your sons. Hey, your wife or your partner at some point, she's going to have a turn too. So we're going to normalize the turn taking is a really motivating factor for a lot of women, especially mothers, because they're like, I, of course, want my kids to have even more than what I had. And so I'm going to teach them about wanting and taking turns as though it's a normal process.
I love that concept. If someone is listening to this and they're resonating, how would they know if they need support?
No, nobody needs support. I just think everybody is killing it. And the reason I say that is because sometimes women come to me and they're like, I think I'm just the problem. I'm the reason everything's bad. And I'm like, no, that's never true. Like everything, especially in families and relationships, exists in a system. You're just part of the system and possibly the strongest part because you're the one seeking out support. So good job, you.
Mhm.
So if you want support, I think is the most important reason to get it, right? And usually people come to me because they're like, my husband is being a giant jerkwad and I don't have any choices because I have these kids or he pays like most of the bills or something like that. And so if they're feeling like, I don't know, I'm stuck in a relationship that I don't have any options in, and I want somebody to help me see what my options are, that's a good indicator that me or someone like me might be able to help you find those options.
I really love that. Very great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Curious if there's anything like if somebody wanted to connect with you or get like a little taste for the work that you do, where would they go?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, CandiceToone.com, Candice with an I, Tune with an E at the end. There is a free course that you can just get right up on the right-hand corner. There's also my book, Wife on Purpose, available for free download on my website. It also has a workbook with it. So if you wanted to take some time and think, what do I really want? That book and workbook will really help you. You can also just message me on Instagram. Candice Toone Coaching is my Instagram handle, and I'm happy to talk to anyone in the DMs. Just be like, I have this question for you. What's going on?
Thank you.
That's would be fun.
Awesome. Is there anything that you would like to leave our listeners with? Any additional anything?
Whenever I'm a guest on a podcast, I always like to say, hey, if you listen on the podcast and you want to try out coaching, I always give a super awesome bonus of 6 weeks of coaching for $300 if you want. So if you say, hey, I heard you on Lauren's podcast, you can just be like, let's try it out because we need to have a little bit of time to get to know each other, but I also don't want it to be like a huge investment for you. So it's fun to just do that.
Really great way of getting people to try coaching, see if it's a good fit while also making progress.
Yeah, you're definitely going to get something useful by the end of 6 weeks. And one of the things you'll get is you'll know if you want to continue on or if you want a different kind of support. So
Incredible.
it's nice to stop wondering.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much for your time and for being here and for answering these questions. I really appreciate it. And for anyone listening, if you had any questions from this episode, I do have a free Telegram group where you can go and ask them. I can pass them on, or we can do another episode, or feel free to reach out and DM us individually. We would love to hear what your takeaways are. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode.